2023 is here, and so is the Friday GT Sprint Challenge. Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome back to RCI TV. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by John Dalton with Ryan Gill behind the pictures today. And what a day it's going to be, starting out a new campaign, the first Friday campaign of the new year. A lot of new faces in the driver's seat, a lot of returning faces as well. We'll get more into that as the day goes on. Welcome in, John Dalton with me here for the second time in a single week. John, what do you reckon? It's Monza, always a tricky track to start out a championship.
Yeah, definitely, Jesse. We know Monza turn one is that typical kind of pinch point where, you know, everything always kicks off, people get sandwiched, 3 into 1 just simply doesn't go, and then people end up with bumps everywhere else. But like I say, Jesse, a few good names up and down the grid. We've got a few new names signing up this Friday, which is great to see. And the top 16 as practice ends, separated by just under a second. So, I mean, with slipstreaming, you know, lots of long straights, it's going to be certainly one to watch.
Of course, we always talk about things like BOP when it comes to a track like this. Some of it might find a little bit surprising. Admittedly, some of the cars that are able to keep up and hang out here inside the top 10, but we'll see what qualifying has to bring. And on top of all of that, we have a wealth of talent in this series that is the unknown. Where is everybody going to shake out? We've seen a lot of these drivers in this series today compete sort of in isolation, but now they're racing against each other in this series, perhaps for the very first time. It's going to be quite exciting to see how they all get on.
Yeah, definitely. It's a few names that I've not seen up the top of the grid, which is, you know, definitely interesting to watch out for. We're going to have, you know, a few different cars up and down the grid. We've got a nice kind of range of manufacturers for this Friday as well, as the cars begin to leave the pit lane for qualifying. Just under 10 minutes of qualifying set a lap. Obviously, not too many cars tonight. 23, I believe, have turned up at Monza tonight. 23, yep, 23. So track position is going to be nice and easy to find. It's not going to be very tricky at all as everybody rounds through the first chicane. This man here, Juna Savalainen, very common name, Jesse, in RCI, and I'm sure you know as well as I do, he's a strong pick for today.
Sure is. There's a bunch of drivers you could probably argue. You got Fry, Tan, Savalainen, Merrills, even Allen to talk about. Aaron Trout, we'll see if they can stay up inside the top 10. John Arazer, etc. and so forth. Samir Foch, by the way, also returning in that Ferrari. You got Mellis, Soldatov. Again, I'm just naming a few. It is anybody's game. The draft at a premium here, and also with a interesting BOP that you might not expect. You could see some interesting selections up at the front. Allen, perhaps in that Porsche, with Fry as well. Normally, it's a death sentence bringing a Porsche to a fast track like this. The BOP somewhat favorable to the Stuttgart manufacturer here. It's not going to struggle nearly as much as you would see at other tracks of similar speed, and that just helps amp up the excitement for us. Of course, when the race comes, we'll be talking about turn one, but before that, let's talk about the Parabolica for a second. Imperative to get a good run out of this turn to set a quick lap.
Yeah, as we jump on board, Juna Savalainen in the Mercedes AMG, maximising the run as much as you can out of the curve of Parabolica. Very long run down into turn one. It feels like it kind of goes on forever. You snatch fifth. Very long rev out for Juna on the 6th gear. Finally does hit 6th gear there. The motor displaying 276 kilometers an hour before jumping on the brakes for turn one. Big anti-cut curbs on the inside. Want to be careful on them, not to unsettle the car, not to lose too much ground with the traction control kicking in, and you now want to maximize your exit through turn was essentially 3, long sweeping right-hander all the way around to the right. Again, feels like something never ending as we now set ourselves up for the second variante chicane. Hard on the brakes by the orange marker on the pit wall, flicking it left, flicking it right again. Anti-cut curbs very big on the inside, and now trying to get the cleanest exit you can as you run towards the first of the Lesmo curves. Banked on the inside, want to chuck the car in, use the camera of the road to try and drag the car around, maximising all of the exit curve there right up to the end of the AstroTurf before heading in to the second Lesmo curve there. Very inside, tricky curve on the inside. Don't want to hit it too hard, but you do want to run nice and close to look to try and slingshot the car through the second Lesmo and now up towards the Variante Ascari, coming in hard on the brakes again. Orange marker on the right-hand side, good reference point. Jump over the anti-cut curves on the inside. Be very careful on the weight transition from the left to the right and back to the left. Very easy for the kind of mid-engine, rear-engine cars to upset themselves. Front engine in the Mercedes, very easy to kind of flick about and not really lose the rear end as much. And now finally the run back down to the Parabolica. Want to keep this nice and clean on the brakes again. A little bit of camber on the inside, use it to kind of suck the car into the corner and then straighten up the steering to try and maximise the run as much as you can out of the curve of Parabolica, and then taking the shortest run to the line. Joona Savolainen sets a 1:47.472 for a benchmark time.
Dylan Tan comes in and beats that. Hugo Merrill slots into second place. So with that, Savolainen down to the second row. Richard Billen coming in, and now that's going to be outpaced by another Honda as well. Allen inside the top four in the 223 Porsche, as everybody trying to set representative times. But Dylan Tan, the Legion of Racers McLaren, at 144, sitting at the top of the heap. A 47.402, quickest thus far. But you and I both know, partner, that is not going to last.
Yeah, definitely so. With all these drivers up and down the grid, everybody's going to be super competitive at finding their feet, shaving out as much fuel load as they can. The drivers are probably going for maybe 2 runs on the Pirellis. Track nice and hot, 24 air temperature, 33 track on the actual asphalt itself. So tyres going to be coming into their window very quickly. You know, tyre blankets, especially in the GT3 cars. As we see Savolainen go wide there in the second Lesmo curve. Tan follows kind of suit almost, but does manage to keep it on the black stuff as they head now under the old banking of the Monza kind of oval that sits around the outside of the main GP circuit. The lap is still valid for Dylan Tan coming into the Ascari chicane, looking very good in the first couple of sectors, Jesse. So thinking he's heard you up here in the comms booth that he is seeking for an improvement this time by.
Yeah, a lot of times it comes about setting a representative lap and then going for it with the tires as warm as they possibly can be up inside the range surely by this point on these cars, and that also helps and aids grip and traction. Now, will we see a run out here by Dylan Tan? I don't think so. You know, usually you see cars coming out of the Parabolica going as wide as possible to maximize, but no, trying to take the shortest line around, and it has worked. It's a 42.250. That is 0.2 quicker than Hugo Merrill's time, and the next quickest, Billen, comes across the line. That will be P8, a 47.795 for them. Hello and welcome in to our lovely chat for a new season of GT Sprint Challenge here on RCI. We hope that you had a fantastic winter break and are excited as we are for more GT racing action. Of course, we don't just have GT3 cars here at RCI, do we? We don't even just have ACC here anymore. More information about all of the goings-ons a little bit later on. As for now, focusing on qualifying. Final 3.5 minutes left to go. As I always say, John, you mentioned the weather, and I will just say, I didn't talk about the weather because there's nothing to complain about, but right, you are. Absolutely perfect conditions here, albeit slightly warm, but everybody doing their level best. Here is Cody Sherritt in the 38 car. That will be good enough for P3 for the South African driver. That was an excellent lap time, 0.2 off a pole.
Yeah, definitely a very competitive field tonight, Jesse. Say 0.2 off a pole. We've got Hugo Merles near the top there, just under 0.2 off pole as we speak about Hugo Merles. Here he is in the Jean Alesi Esports Academy car. Great combination of colours on that car. Really, really like that livery. Great to see, obviously, liveries at RCI being told apparently up by 1/10 as it stands coming down to the Parabolica, tipping it in. A little bit of traffic ahead, not going to affect Hugo Merles here, as again it takes the shorter line through the Parabolica, trying to shorten the lap, I guess, as much as he can to run that clock off a lot sooner. Comes across the line. Hugo Merles not good enough for pole, but a very small improvement, Jesse, and you literally can't split that between Hugo Merles and Tan. So these guys are running these laps consistently in a race. This is going to be some pretty exciting stuff towards the front end of the field.
It sure is. Less than 1/10. You've got another 10th back to Sherritt in third place, and even less than that to Savolainen. and everybody else all piling in. It is very common to see this. Samir Foch trying to set a more representative time of his pace. The Ferrari Enjoyers 888, that's a 47.952. Good enough to get that driver inside the top 10. Really wouldn't worry too much about Foch's qualifying pace here. That always seems to trend towards the front no matter where they are, but usually somewhat unusual to see them that far down.
Yeah, Foch's driver, I'm sure everybody knows. Samir Foch needs no introduction. Big Ferrari lover, supposedly, despite what his sarcastic team name may state on the car tonight. But yeah, definitely expected Foch to be up, just inside the top 10, but teetering on the edge of it. Definitely not somewhere where he could be, he could definitely better himself there. So eyes on Samir Foch during the race. He's definitely one of those drivers that kind of, strikes out a bit of luck sometimes, finds his way kind of meandering up the field through other people's maybe misfortunes or just lack of pace in the race. We all know qualifying isn't the be-all and end-all in ACC. It's all about consistency, Jesse, and we do say time and time again over this race today, consistency is going to be your friend.
Sure is. Michael Herman Fry trying to stay out of the bottom part of the field. Now, again, as we mentioned, the Porsche, not usually a car that you would think about outright pace around a track like Monza, but I can assure you it definitely does have some, and I think the HRF Motorsport driver is about to show you a little bit of an improvement, and did. A 48.307, still a little bit off the mark, and especially off the mark of the fastest Porsche in the session. That's Allen in P3 right now. That 223 is about a quarter of a second off of Dylan Tanstein, who just reset quickest lap, a 47.132. Tan got himself a little insurance right there.
Yeah, definitely a good buffer to get yourself into, just inside the 147 mark. Still a little bit of time to gain before we hit the 46s, but everything to play for, Jesse. When you've got margins this small between Hugo Merles, Joshua Allen, very small margin to Sherat, Savalainen, another small margin between those two guys. And the top, what are we looking at? The top 15 just about within a second of each other, and obviously slipstream range at Monza. It's going to be something very, very crucial indeed as we watch here. Jonas Savalainen, one of the last cars on a fast lap here as a checkered flag drops, so this will be his final stab at it. Looking very good in the first couple of sectors, rounding through the Parabolica again, trying to keep it tight to the pay entry line to try and maximize as much of a run towards the line as he can, shorten it off as much as possible, and he does improve, does jump up into P2. Still not good enough to take the pole away from Tan, but we know that Mercedes has got some great grunt in a straight line, Jesse.
Sure is, and just to cover all of our bases here, Allen was absolutely going for it in Ascari and went off the road, so they will take no further part in this session as time has elapsed. All flying laps counting, of course. Alessio Mellis on a little bit of a flyer, trying to get themselves up inside the top 10. Doing so would knock Foch down outside of the top 10. Ferrari versus Ferrari, of course. We will see, can they hold on through it through the Ascari? I almost call that a chicane, I suppose. It is a very interesting and very unique corner. You don't want to run too far out there. There's sand, and go far enough out there, it'll just invalidate your lap on top of that. Let's see, what does Alessio Mellis have?
So yeah, Alessio Mellis to the line now through the Parabolica. Indeed, looking at the first couple of sectors, it is looking a little bit close to be an improvement, but nevertheless to the line, no improvement to be had. Currently resides in P12 on the qualifying. So very fast qualifying session here, only 10 minutes tonight before we jump into the race. We do have a little interlude between the two sessions, which is probably, Jesse, a perfect time to tell the viewers at home what is happening in RCI in 2023.
Absolutely read my mind. Normally this is the part of the broadcast where we show you the standings for the championship, but because this is a new championship, we don't have that. So we don't, so we won't. So we will talk about the goings on here at RCI. Brand new year, and we are back and better than ever. Of course, we have the 6-hour challenge esports series, our very first esports series event with a minimum €8,000 prize pool, minimum 8,000 euros, and that is incredible stuff. And of course, that is one of those championships that you have the opportunity to sign up and make a little bit of money back there. And just wow, $8,000. Talk about going big for your very first series. All the races 6 hours, and it is a 5-round championship. And don't worry if that's too rich for your blood, we still have the coinciding community-driven series that will race alongside of that. A lot of big teams have signed up for RCI's very first esports series. Of course, we also have the iRacing series that is an open signups now. You've got, I'm not entirely sure, I think it's GT4 and Mazda Cup cars is what that is. And signups now available for that series starting February 11th. And that is our first proper iRacing series. Join our website, racerci.com, for information about that. Of course, we have the Monday Champ in full swing now, and now we're starting off with Friday Champ as well. Signups for the GT4 Donington 4-hour race are open as well. That race being held on January 21st, I'm pretty sure. So that's happening as well. So many things going on here. We got iRacing starting up with more information about that on our Discord. You got the Okayama 3-hour race as well, which is a iRacing race as well, independent of itself. My goodness, so much going on, John.
Yeah, so much going on in 2023 for RCI, and it's great to, you know, be branching out into other territories such as iRacing, and obviously dabbling our hand in the kind of esports pool, as it were. I mean, with that €8,000 prize money at a minimum, you know, like you said on Monday, Jesse, that pot could grow bigger. That's just, you know, targeted €8,000. So, you know, it'd be great to see, obviously, the series aiming to showcase the absolute best of what sim racing has to offer on Assetto Corsa Competizione. And like you say, we are running that free event alongside the esports series. So if you don't fancy partnering with any of your hard-earned cash and you just want to race for a bit of a giggle with a few friends but follow the same format, then you're more than welcome to do so. Of course, head over to the website, racerci.com, on that one. And we had our rookie start this Wednesday as well. I saw rookies took round 1 at Paul Ricard. So again, if you're new to sim racing, you want to find your feet. You don't, you know, want to delve into the big boy league straight away. You want to kind of dip your toe in the water as such. That's exactly what our rookies championship is. And of course, you can sign up yourself over at racerci.com. But back to tonight's action, Jesse. We say it every time. We always ask each other, who is your money on? I can never make a decision, but you firmly put your money on somebody. Who is your money on tonight?
Oh, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I think you would have to take Dylan Tan, but I think that's a bit of a boring answer, so I won't do that. Hugo Merrils has had some really unfortunate luck here at Monza in that Ferrari in recent memory. 2 races on the trot that I'm aware of where they were fighting for a podium for a win, and it hasn't come off. Tonight is the night that all the demons get slayed in one fell swoop. Hugo Merrils is going to win tonight.
Very solid choice, I would say. Sitting himself in P3 in the Ferrari. We have boos from our caster Ryan Gill through our headsets as well. His money might be on somebody else tonight. But the highest placed Ferrari on the grid, Hugo Merrils in the P3 slot. Joshua Allen in a Porsche. So we have four different manufacturers, Jesse, in the top 4. So it does prove that one car isn't always the best to pick.
Yeah, and certainly, too, if you just look at the top 10, you've got a bunch of Hondas back in the back half of the top 10, and it's very interesting to see. There is a nice mix of different platforms, and all these cars are going to race. They're going to cut through the air, and they're going to draft up a little bit different. They're going to have different, aero elements as well that change how they corner and brake and all that. So all these cars, very different, no copy-paste job here, and that's going to determine, of course, who wins into turn 1, and also where you're better, where you can make passes. There are more than a few passing opportunities here at Monza, if I do dare say myself, and even some where you probably wouldn't think are passing opportunities, but if you're brave enough, you certainly can try and make it. Hopefully, though, we have a clean start to 2023 here on the Friday Champ. Of course, we do have our armada of stewards who are ready at a moment's notice, and hopefully we can avoid the race restart if the majority of the field get involved in an incident. I don't think that's going to happen today, though.
Yeah, fingers crossed the stewards In the nicest way, have an easy evening, shall we say. We know Monza turn 1, the pinch point here, is very tricky to get yourself through in double file, let alone in, 3 wide when people want to try and make early ground up on their opponents. But it is probably going to be all about getting around turn 1 cleanly and then start making your moves as you go through, turns 2 down to the second chicane, into the Lesmos, etc. So, ground to be had everywhere. Like you say, Jesse, the slipstream going to be playing a part here, and also the tire wear, how these tires wear through, how these cars, wear through their Pirellis at different rates. You might see somebody very, very strong at the start. We know the Porsche is typically very balanced once you chuck a full tank in the front end, and then as soon as the fuel starts wearing off, the aero shift kind of changes, and then you might start losing a little bit of ground towards the end of the race. We do have 1 hour and 5 minutes on the clock tonight. Those of you that know, some cars might not make an hour 5 without refueling, and that's why we have a mandatory pit stop here tonight. There's a minimum of 1 litre of fuel required. There's a fixed refueling time of 25 seconds, and you have an hour and 2 minutes pit window to serve your stop. So, as we do say in our mandatory stop races, Jesse, the races can be won or lost on pit lane.
Yeah, they certainly have the opportunity to be won or lost on pit lane. And of course, some of you at home are thinking, wait a minute, aren't the sprint races usually a 60-minute affair? Yeah, usually they are. This season, you have 65 minutes. It adds another wrinkle into the fold, a little bit of extra strategy, strategic ability in your toolbox. Of course, you just mentioned, John, some of these cars are going to struggle to go at map 1, whatever map 1 is in these cars. Sometimes map 1 is actually map 8. That's not confusing at all, but they will struggle to go that distance. The tires are going to be a little bit worn at the hour mark, and they got to go at least 5 minutes after that, probably a little bit more, obviously. It's going to be a whole different animal. You get used to us running an hour. It is going to be interesting to see what they do. I don't know. I don't know if people are going to do tires or not. I think it might be viable here.
Yeah, with the track temperature being so warm, Jesse, it could be a good move to pick up some new boots on your car. Grab a brand new set of Pirellis when you come through to grab your fuel. I mean, you're taking, even if you add 1 litre with the fixed refueling window, you do still have to stop for 25 seconds, regardless of if you add 5 litres, 10 litres, 15 litres, it's still 25 seconds, and tyres, of course, only add another 5 seconds to the good. So if you reckon you can make up those 5 seconds before the end of the race, then, albeit it's going to be a definite smart move to make. And curse of the commentators, possibly on the stewards, might
absolutely
be from myself.
Not. I saw that comment.
I apologize if it was.
Today. We're not doing that today. Absolutely not. We got some Sherritt fans in chat. We got some Daily fans, some Bentley fans as well. But it is a McLaren and a Mercedes up front here today. Who will win the battle down into turn 1? Time will only tell. Getting closer to the line. They use the Formula 1 line here. And they will, actually, no, they don't. In fact, they wait till everybody gets on the straight, and they have done. The green flag is down, and Dylan Tan gets a clean breakaway. It's a brilliant run, but can the Mercedes-Benz from the outside keep it even just about as they head down into turn 1? Hard onto the brakes, Tan out in front, and on the outside, Savalainen. Will Savalainen get clean in there? Yes, he will. Here comes Merrill's around the outside. He's getting pressure from Allen. They all just about make it cleanly. Only minor bumps through the first turn, and incredible scenes here. The 67 releases from the pit lane. Now that's Seidman. They qualified 12th. That's dead middle of the field. You can only wonder if that was strategic.
Yeah, I mean, if Monza is a race on the cards that you want to start from the pit lane, you've definitely chosen the right one to do so. But Seidman may be thinking, turn 1, I'm not getting involved in it. I'm starting from the pit lane. I'll see what I can claw back. And we just see how much ground he has lost starting from the pit lane there. Heading around turn 3, we've got a car off in the back, a yellow Honda of some kind. I believe one of the Russian drivers potentially on that one, looking up and down the list to try to work it out. Possibly Ratiani maybe in the 29. It's not. It's Soichev in the 161 Team Up Garage car. Unfortunately, finding himself wide in and out of the Lesmo 1. Not sure if contact happened or whether he just over-rotated on those slightly colder tyres. Of course, everything, even though it's up to temperature, it's not quite up to temperature, and then elbows out move there, hit the curb on the inside, forced out to the outside, and unfortunately Soichev was just the kind of accidental damage. But great to see, not destroying the 50-meter board, Jesse, because that's my breaking point. And the amount of people that destroy that board, it's great to see him going around it, definitely so.
Well, not only did he not destroy the boards, Lesky came back onto the track in an incredibly respectful manner, realizes that it's an hour and 5-minute race, 65 minutes, and didn't want to damage the car beyond what probably was just a second or so of damage. Just unfortunate contact between them and the McLaren right there coming into Lesmo 1. It will happen from time to time. Meanwhile, by the way, this fight that started on the initial start has not cooled off at all. Joshua Allen in the West Competition Racing 223 continuing to fight Hugo Merrells in the 13 Ferrari. Looks like Allen's won that battle for the time being. Meanwhile, the front two have scampered off. Tan and Savalainen have and enjoy a 1.5-second lead behind them, but neither one of them care about the fight for third. They're having a fight for the lead right now.
Yeah, 1.5 seconds turned to 2 seconds through sector 1 there, Jesse. So definitely the two front drivers breaking away from this kind of pack behind, and Joshua Allen going very defensive on Hugo Merrells into turn 1. Looked like there was going to be contact from where I was stood, and kudos to how those two drivers got through the first chicane unscathed, but this does prove why they are in the top split as Jonathan Seville there navigates the second Lesmo in a very colourful Pulse Simsport car. It reminds me of something like something you see in the Flat Out games, possibly. You remember Flat Out, Jesse, from all those years ago?
Yeah, I do. The Flat Out series of video games kind of inspired my music choice as a kid, so it shouldn't be too hard to understand what I'm into music-wise there. It's so many bangers on those soundtracks. Just don't play the third one.
We'll gloss over what that third one may be, because it's probably not as good as the first two, let's just say. But jumping on board with Jonas Savalainen's splitter cam here, we see the back-end view of the McLaren 720S, and we see the amount of draft and grunt that Mercedes has pulled right up to the back of Tan's McLaren into turn 1. Savalainen, of course, on the outside, then becomes the inside for the second part, although Tan running too deep and Savalainen taking avoiding action. Great read from both drivers there. He knew Tan wasn't going to make the corner, so he kind of bailed down the escape road to avoid any collateral damage. But all the meanwhile, Jesse, Joshua Allen is creeping now. These two have started fighting again.
Yeah, this is the thing. It had 1.5 seconds of a lead whenever Allen was fighting Merrells, but now that Allen has gotten clear, they've caught the leaders up here, and this is incredible. Oh no, a car's going to have to spear off in the Seconda Variante. That was incredibly good heads-up driving, but a scary moment for Jonathan Seville.
Great avoiding action there from Jonathan Seville in the 97 Pulse Simsport car. Kind of knew again he wasn't going to make the corner, so kind of bailed out down the grass route just to try and avoid making any contact with his fellow opponents. So great to see the kind of, the very heads-up driving nature of these guys tonight here at Monza. It's almost peculiar for me that it's been, casting nothing but one-make challenges where everybody's kind of elbows out racing touring car style, to now seeing everybody kind of being that little bit more respectful, that little bit more avoiding action, as we see a big slide there from Samir Foch ahead, well held, jumped over the anti-cut curb on the inside a little bit too hard, and it manages to catch the back end of that 888 Ferrari. But Peter O'Brien now in the slipstream wake of Soldatov's Aston Martin. The Aston Martins, Jesse, seem to be struggling a little bit here. We didn't see them too far up the grid in qualifying, and now we see them just outside the top 10, so a few moves have been made for them, but still not looking like a very strong performance here today.
Yeah, it hasn't gone to plan for them. Now, that might be a selection of car, talking about the Aston, that would benefit them in race 2, 3, 4, and 5, that they may have to just, bite it here today, because they just don't have the pace, and it's a long-term effect. Oh no, near calamity here, as it will be a couple of contacts. The 16 outruns the corner, that spooks the Aston, which runs into another Aston. That might have been a little bit of contact that sent that all going. and everybody is going to pretty much escape from that with minor contact, but certainly one for the stewards here early.
Yeah, definitely one for the stewards to take a look at. Of course, they sit in the box across from us. Lots of extra views that we don't have. They have, access to unlimited replays to assess the situation from every single angle they can, monitor all the drivers' inputs, who did what to who, and where it ended up. We do have a comment in the chat about the mandatory pit stop. We did cover this in the warm-up, but we'll cross it again. So we have a mandatory stop, as you can see at the top of the board. We have 1 litre of fuel required. We have a fixed refueling time of 25 seconds, and we have 1 hour 2 minutes to serve that stop in the race. So we kind of got, even if you chuck a litre in, you're still going to get charged for 25 seconds. So probably a lot of drivers will go 50-50 on the fuel split. So they'll take half a tank at the beginning, half a tank towards the end, and then it's all about the tyres. Tyres are going to cost them 5 seconds in additional time. If you make that 5 seconds up over your opponents, you're quits in. If for whatever reason you can't make those new tyres work as well for 5 seconds across the remainder of the race, then you're of course not going to be taking them for much gain. So we're going to see a mixed strategy, possibly up and down the field. Keen-eyed YouTube chatter again that says 2 pit stops early. So we do have the 999 Aston Martin, as you see at the bottom of the board there, and then we have unfortunately lost 1 car, so we are down to 22. So that is the last car in the runnings. Nobody else has taken a stop, although a very early stop, Jesse. Not sure if we can make the 65-minute race.
Yeah, I'm quite curious what happened to Aaron Trout in the 999. I have no data on that, but what I can tell you is the retired car is the number 7 of Kubacki. They had a issue in the first chicane, unknown if that was assisted or not, but they have retired that car, leaving us with 22 for the time being. So that was the 7 that had retired. Everybody else still going, and as the eagle-eyed chatter spotted, there has been a double pit stop for Aaron Trout in the 999. I wonder if maybe there was something amiss with that car that caused them to have to do that. Little argy-bargy here in the middle of the field, and between 2 Hondas nonetheless, going at it in the Lesmos, but they just about get it sorted out for Ascari this time. Fighting it out, you're going to battle. You're going to have to battle. The stewards are going to let little ticky-tack stuff, they're going to let that go. But if you gain an advantage by doing something like that, that is a completely different animal indeed. I just want to point out something about the strategy here that I think a lot of the teams are using that is ingenious. It's a mandatory 1 liter of fuel, but you're going to be sat still in your pit box for a minimum of 25 seconds to begin with. A lot of these drivers, almost all of them, I'd probably argue, have guessed on fuel and have tried to short fill the car to make the car lighter, to have more speed. What they've guessed on is how much fuel they're going to need, meaning how do I maximize that 25 seconds sitting still by putting fuel in the car. Some of the teams are going to get that wrong, and it is going to mix it up. Incredible racing here. Soldatov going around the outside. More contact down into the first chicane. The 427 here, Marquez. It's going to be a log jam. The 16 of O'Brien back into the back of Soldatov. That will release Marquez for the time being, but here comes Mellis and Fry.
Yeah, that's the only problem. Having a little bump in turn 1, it does affect your run down into the second chicane, and you see the Porsche of Fry all over the back of that is Soldatov. Sorry, now the board shuffles around. We see a little bit of racing behind as well from Fry and Mellis.
So
181-15. Mellis is through the 181 of Fry, looking like he's lost out there as well. Sointchev comes through in the 161 Honda, making his way back up the grid after the Lesmo 1 incident, where we saw him run out wide and very courteously avoid the 50-meter board. And another car sideways, Jesse Lee. It's Seminara coming out of the Lesmo 2. Contact spun to the inside. There's a car off to the right-hand side, somewhere in the gravel, just under the Jonathan Seville, being told in my ear again. A very rotten race for Jonathan in the McLaren there. We see him in the 97 Pulse Sim Sport. Possibly tried to go around the outside, a little bit of shoulder barging. We all know how well shoulder, sorry, put my teeth back in. It works in ACC. It's not a particularly netcode friendly game, should we say sometimes.
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to regain my composure from that.
I cannot say that word for the life of me, Jesse. That's the one that stumps me every time. Shoulder
my goodness.
barging.
I will say that was a unfortunate moment there, and that has taken out one of our top 10 players, if not two of them, in one fell swoop. Lesmos are like that sometimes. Sometimes it's your day, sometimes it isn't. Lieutenant here trying to hold on to a position. Samir Foss trying to further get himself up the grid just a bit. We've got Jordan Daly fans in the chat. Here's your Jordan Daly update. Started P15. He's inside the top 10 and the only Bentley in the championship. That 197 going absolutely fantastically. And so Samir Foss, remember, didn't qualify nearly as well as we would have expected. Qualified P10 up into 7th, looking for 6th place here. Are we really surprised? It's just what Samir does.
Yeah, we always see Samir with a kind of fairly average, maybe qualifying session, not, you know, the pace that he can do.
Samir, if you hear this, I didn't say that. That was John Dalton.
Please no witch hunt. Please don't witch hunt me. But we always see Foch is definitely one of those drivers that does climb up the order as the race goes on. He's not always, you know, towards the top end of the field sometimes, but somehow finds his way there when the checkered flag drops. So definitely some room for improvement here for Samir. We have a few Samir Foches in chat saying it's a horrible place to go off in the second Lesmo, which it is. Gravel trap seems to go on for days, as now we see Alessio Mellers going defensive into Ascari from Soldertovs. NSX around the outside, of course, gives him the inside line now for the kind of switchback and manages to complete the move before the third turn. But going side by side into that third turn, Jesse, is not a move you want to try.
Ooh, that is a dangerous proposition. You got to have a lot of trust. Coming through Ascari side by side is almost always a bad idea, but if you know who you're racing against and you know that you know what you have in particular with your car, it's not the end of the world going through there. It is an easy way to absolutely hemorrhage time. Here's the 29, thinking about making a move. No, it's already been done. I'm afraid the Ferrari has gotten through. Samir Foch is through, and if you're wondering why I'm stammering ever so slightly, it's because Rattani and Billen have the same car that are almost identically liveried, and I thought for a second something happened to the 29, and I was looking at the 183, but I am not. Those are two very identical cars, or fairly identical cars nonetheless, but Samir Foch threw up into P6 as we have seen our first penalties of the day come through.
Yeah, that was the point I was about to move on to, Jesse Lee. Incident on lap 1, turn 1, involving the 29 and the 183. We have a warning for the car 29 for braking too late before turn 1 and making contact. We then have an incident on lap 1, turn 4, involving the 161 and the 38. That's Sherat, for those wondering. The 38 forces the 161 off track, deemed by the stewards. Incident on lap 2, turn 1, involving the 481 and the 7. Racing incident, both drivers deemed at fault. We then have an incident on lap 2, turn 8, involving the 423 and the number 16. 5 seconds for the car 423, which is Marquez down in P13. They say unlucky for some, especially on Friday the 13th. Maybe not ideal on that one. We have a forcible overtake on the 16 with no position return for that one. Incident on lap 3, turn 2, involving the 181 and the 699 racing incident. Lap 3, turn 6, 161 and the 7 racing incident. And lap 3, turn 7, along the 999 and the 161 again. Racing incident, minor contact. And that is your stewards up to date as we stand. So a couple of 5 seconds deemed out there, Jesse. Gonna have to take him in the pit stop. So the 25-second refueling window is going to feel like an eternity for some of these guys.
It certainly is, and I had not clocked that it was Friday the 13th all day. I hadn't considered it until just now. It makes me slightly uneasy. It also makes me feel that we've gotten off very lucky today, if you are the superstitious type, that we've only had the few minor incidents that have occurred, and those have been dealt with justly. And keep in mind, out front, still a fight. Dylan Tan leading the race with Savalainen in tow. Now, Savalainen had fallen off to the tune of about a second off the back of Tan. Savalainen has the fastest lap of the race, the Speed Juice fastest lap of the race. Your name here if you want to sponsor our fastest lap, but it is a little bit of tit for tat between these two. I don't think Savalainen is getting as close as he could be doing at this particular point, maybe allowing Tan to tow him around the racetrack, saving on fuel, saving on tires perhaps as well. One thing I can tell you is Allen in the Porsche behind, their car has gone off a little bit. Remember, they were a part of this breakaway up front. Now Allen is falling off, and now Hugo Merrill's is coming back into the picture for P3.
Yeah, probably as drivers' fuel loads adjust, like you say, Jesse, people start figuring out what they're going to kind of do in the race. Are they going to kind of, employ this dance partner system almost, where you have one car such as Tan and a second car, Savalainen, being towed about the Monza circuit. Obviously, Savalainen definitely has the grunt in a straight line, should we say, over Tan's McLaren, but Tan's McLaren possibly that little bit better in the twisties that we do have here at Monza. Occasionally, it's not all straight brake and chicane. We do have a few off chicane corners, so it's good to see. Quick flash of a yellow flag in turn 1, just seeing on the track radar to the right hand side of the screen, hoping everything has gone okay there. And we've been told by one of our stewards that was just the beginning. There's still more to come. Despite how clean it looks on the broadcast, the tool here at RCI has picked up a few more incidents, so a few more updates coming shortly, Jesse.
Yeah, I can imagine that the program that we use to detect incidents has picked up quite a few of them. I still stand by the fact that I think maybe we have one more penalty coming in that I'm aware of, and other than that, I think it's going to be a lot of fender benders, if you will. But beyond that, I can't imagine, because it's just it's been pretty close thus far, but they've done mostly a good job of keeping it off of each other to an extreme degree, I would say. But as we always say, the stewards know more than us, so I can be proven wrong at any given time. Just a heads up on the time penalties. You are required by ACC rules to serve that extra time penalty in the pit lane, so instead of a 25-second stop for the drivers that unfortunately find themselves on the receiving end of a 5-second penalty, it'll just be a 30-second stop. Now, if you get that after you've made your mandatory pit stop, it's just added on to your total time at the end of the race. But obviously only a couple of cars have done that. The 481 Porsche of Gohan has come in and completed their mandatory stop. Nobody else has come in. To absolutely nobody's surprise, I think they're all going to go to about halfway and then come in.
Yeah, I mean, the simple strat is to, chuck half a tank of fuel in, as we see very dicey moments through the first chicane for the Ferrari of Melez, and Soldatov there in the head, nearly becoming kind of collateral damage on the last of the late breakers, but unfortunately the Aston of Soldatov, that is, has lost out. Soichev ahead, nearly being the collateral damage in the NSX. But yeah, go back to your point, Jesse. Most drivers will probably be chucking in, half a tank of fuel, going as far as they can on it, burning as little as they probably could on the opening lap. Go as far as they can, chuck the other half in, back out they come, and see where they end up. Some drivers maybe have done slightly longer runs in their cars from the past, maybe know that the Pirellis might drop off towards the later half of their stint. Will they think the 5 seconds is going to be worth it? Would you lose the 5 seconds by not taking it, or would you gain the 5 seconds back by taking the tyres? So going to have a mixed strategy up and down the field today, and it's going to be exciting to see how the final times turn out.
It's a good point. If you filled up a little heavy, you would consider it. Oh, that's a big lunge from Savalainen. Is he going to be able to make it stick in the Parabolica, going as absolutely wide as possible? Here comes Tan back. No, he's not going to be there. It's going to be single file as they come onto the front straight, the pit straight here at Monza, and a new leader of the race, the getting slower everyday car. I've always hated the name of it, but it doesn't matter. They're leading the race right now. A little look from Tan, down into 1, a double look from Tan. He pulls out. He's in there down into turn 1. It's squiggly on the brakes for Savalainen. Tan around the outside. They're giving each other room. It's very respectful. There's just about a car length there. Oh my goodness, Savalainen tries to close the door. Tan says, no, absolutely not. I'm there. The speed of the Mercedes out of the corner might have just saved him. As he gets single file, he checks his mirrors, and he's in there. New leader, Savalainen.
Yeah, some great driving there from both of these guys, Dylan Tan and Joona Salvalainen, through what was Parabolica, down the main straight and through the first chicane. Great to see what these guys can do side by side. Very respectful racing, as you said, Jesse, from both of them. Salvalainen even jinking to driver's left just to allow enough room for Tan to come off that curb and not hit the grass and upset the McLaren. So great to see, but I think the Mercedes grunt just absolutely saved him there. You could see him down the front straightaway every time Tan pulled out. He lost that little bit of ground to Salvalainen, and then coming out of the first turn, obviously Salvalainen's Mercedes just had the absolute legs on him. But great to see side-by-side racing through turn 1 at Monza, and what is not so great to see, here's more stewards reports coming in, Jesse. We shall go, jump in if need be. Incident on lap 3, turn 7, involving the 999 and the 16 due to racing incident minor contact. We're going to have an incident on lap 4, turn 1, involving the number 7, the 161, no further action. The number 7 pulls out the 161 and brakes very early for turn 1, making contact from behind unavoidable for the 161, no further action taken. Incident on lap 4, turn 3, involving the 991 and the 423. It's 5 seconds for the 991, which is Soldatov down in P12, the car you're seeing on your screen right now. We have a 991 rejoins and moves to the racing line immediately, thus cutting off the 15, which is where the warning was. No, sorry, I'm reading too far ahead now, sorry. The 991 releases their brakes into turn 1, diving for the apex and causing contact with the 423, sorry. Incident lap 2, turn 2, involving the 991 and the 15. This is the warning for the 991, where the 991 rejoins immediately and moves to the racing line, cutting off the 15. We then have an incident on lap 5, turn 5, involving the 423 racing incident. I think we're missing a car number off that one. The 423 racing incident, minor contact with no one. The lap 5, turn 7, involving the 12 and the 29. We have a racing incident, minor contact on that one again. Incident lap 6, turn 3, involving the 423 and the 991 again. We have a 5 second for the 423. The 423 does not hold its line in a braking zone, and that is of course Marquez down in P13. So P13 now with a 10-second penalty to serve at his pit stop, so that is going to feel like an eternity by the time he stops.
Yeah, that's going to drop him right down the order for Marquez, I'm afraid, as that will be, I'm trying to do the quick math here, that's going to drop him about 20th place maybe. Might even be a little bit worse than that. We'll have to see how that shakes out for them. And that was just so much contact between the 991, the 423, and the 181 earlier on that you had to know that at some point it was going to happen, and it has happened, and they're all still together, so there is still the possibility of more of that. A couple of cars getting a little sideways as Fry gets a drive-through penalty, and I'm going to assume that is for track limits, unless I'm very much mistaken, because he was well off the racetrack there, and it showed up the instant he rejoined. So unless the stewards are pulling the wool over my eyes, I think we've got our first drive-through for track limits of the year.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think we had one in Monday that we streamed. At Imola, of all places, with all the extra tarmac that is there. You think Imola would be the prime location for a track limits drive-through, but unfortunately not. It's Monza, the place where you've only got really 2 corners I can kind of think of. You've got Ascari 2. Not Ascari 2, Lesmo 2 on the exit. That's a trigger, and then the exit of Ascari in the third part of that, running too wide, of course, over the extra tarmac out there, can of course pick you up a penalty. So it's interesting to see, Jesse, how we've managed that one.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I've done that myself, running wide in Ascari, and sometimes it gets you, sometimes it doesn't. But as far off as Michael Herman Fry was, it's no surprise to me that the HRF Motorsport car got a drive through there. That means they've been pushing the track limits pretty heavy for the past 15 minutes, and unfortunately finds themselves on the receiving end of the first drive-through of the year. But they'll have to regroup and come back next week and hope for a better result, because it's going to be a long road to the checkered flag here this evening with that considered. Speaking of things to consider, Savalainen has passed Tan. We brought you that news. Tan's not fallen off the back of Savalainen. We didn't expect as much. Doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. Just seems like Savalainen got a run and took it. Speaking of taking a run, will Hugo Merrells take a run on Allen down into turn one? He's pulling out. He's looking. They're going to be side by side. He's got a fender on him. No, he doesn't. He has to brake a little bit earlier, does Merrells, and that allows Allen to get back out in front. It's these two continue their respectful drive, racing each other. You love to see good driving all throughout the field, and especially this high up in the field with pro drivers. This is what it means to be a pro, folks. Millimeters of separation, clean racing, and good racing at that.
Definitely so, and I'm hoping to see a lot more of this in our first delve into the esports world. Obviously the paid competition coming up this year with a minimum €8,000 prize pool. So if you've just joined and you're wondering what's John Dalton going on about, head over to racerci.com where you can find full details of that event over there and possibly win yourself some cash in 2023 if you think you're up to it. And Ryan Gill's also telling me news to the stream, Jesse Lee. I've not heard this from Monday.
This is a brand new news bulletin.
This is
breaking news.
Dun, 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 dun. Breaking news from RCI. Apparently, we're also having a giveaway in the stream where we obviously streamed the 6-hour event, brought to you by none other than Fanatec. That's the way you'll go.
Ooh, I am going woo. I don't know why. I'm ineligible because I work
exactly.
here, but
we can't do this.
Incredible.
But definitely tune in to find out what you can get your paws on, courtesy from the RCI esports broadcast.
That is lovely to have fantastic partners like Fanatec, of course, and Driver 61 and AK Informatica as well. And talk about the minimum €8,000 prize pool for the esports event. It's going to absolutely kick off, just like Hugo Merrells trying to make this pass for the second consecutive lap. But unfortunately, it's the same result. Trying the crossover, he might just have a nose there. No, he doesn't. Falls back in line. And I've just noticed that Sherritt is closing in here, and this is good news for Sherritt as well, because if they can get something done here, that will lessen the impact of that 5-second penalty that they have, especially if they can get clear of these two and get up the road a little bit. It would essentially nullify the penalty, if you will. Now, it's still a 5-second penalty no matter what, but they wouldn't be losing a ton of time. They'd still have a fight on for the podium if they could get that done.
Yeah, it's the only problem battling at Monza. You kind of hamper yourself through a few of the corners where the driver behind you gets a nice clear run, such as Sherritt is doing in the number 38 McLaren back there. Great to see, obviously, these guys fighting very respectfully. Nobody's, elbows out, shoving each other off. But Hugo Merrells just doesn't have that extra millimeter that he needs really to get his car alongside Allen, get it in that awkward place on the Porsche, and then kind of muscle his way through on the inside of one of the braking zones. But he's getting so closer almost every lap. He's sized up Allen for the past kind of half an hour or so, and now thinks this is where I'm probably going to be making moves as we see single file through the Parabolica. The Porsche just has enough legs, Jesse, which I didn't think I would ever say in a broadcast, knowing how bad the Porsche typically is in a straight line. Any Porsche drivers in chat will know exactly what I mean when I say that. But Joshua Allen just hustling his way through, and just looked at the board, Jesse. Tan has taken his pit stop.
Dylan Tan pitting out of P2. He sat on the pole here, lost the lead, and has decided enough is enough. Is no longer running in the trail of Savalainen, and that's the first of the takers anywhere near the top 15. Now, will that prove fruitful for the 144 McLaren? We will have to see. You're talking about the Porsche and what Allen is able to accomplish in that car, and it's got good BOP here at Monza. I mentioned that in the intro, that it's not terrible here. It's not what you would expect, considering some other places in a straight line it's left for dead, but it's not here for whatever reason. It's got enough oomph. Especially, I've noticed, if you get out of the Parabolica very well, or any corner for that matter, like you said, Dalton, I could not have said that better. It has just enough to keep everybody at bay, and that will further frustrate anybody else who would assume come on, I've got to be faster than the Porsche, right? Not in Monza, you don't have to be.
Yeah, definitely so. The Porsche getting the kind of favourable end of the bop in the Monza essentially, but yeah, it just has just enough, as you said, Jesse, just to keep ahead of Hugo Morales. It's going to be frustrating him even more. We have a couple of Cody Chirac fans in the chat cheering him on, so hopefully he can get in. And Savalainen sees a car possibly ahead, Jesse, a lapped piece of traffic, and thinks, I'm not going to hinder myself here. I'm going to come in, we're going to make some breathing space, we're going to see where we come out, and behind it forces Hugo Morales in, as well as Cody Chirac. So everybody on the lane deciding about the halfway mark. We did say, Jesse, you know, just under 30 minutes gone. We're starting to see a lot of drivers coming in now, so they're going to come in, they're going to size up kind of, you know, 34 minutes or so of fuel plus a couple more laps. Jordan Daly, Alessio Melez coming in, Jonathan Seville in the background also coming in for the Pulse Simsport team number 97. Everybody else circulating, of course. Anybody with a white P that you see on the sideboard there is in the lane at the moment. Anybody with an orange 1 still has a pit lane to clear, or a pit stop to clear, should we say. And anybody with a green down the bottom, Dylan Tan, first of your kind of leaders to pit, essentially down in P2, finds himself now down in P16. But look at the block of white cars, Jesse. It's going to be firing through and gaining a lot of track position here.
We'll have to see where he comes out. Remember, he was P2 prior to the stop. Of course, he won't quite get there. He could be P6 if he can get in front of Merrill's. Will he get in front of Savalainen? He'll be back inside the top 5. Watch the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. He's in 9th place at the time, and it's going to continue to, actually, yeah, it is. It's going to continue to be 9th place, because everybody else that has still not made their stop has come through. Savalainen will retain the pseudo lead of the race, and that will reset them. So Tan, who tried to make that stop to do the overcut, or the undercut rather, if you will, it didn't quite come off. It didn't really, actually it might have hurt him ever so slightly. He's definitely further behind than he was prior, so a better stop perhaps for Savalainen, but keep in mind those tires will be cold on Juna Savalainen's car. Will that allow Tan to come back into the fray here? Horrible news for fans of the Bentley. Horrible news for the Just Gamers 197 Jordan Daly. Drive-through penalty, John.
Yeah, easily done here, Jesse Lee. I'm sure you know the same as I do. Monza pit lane entry, very tricky to judge when you come steaming off the Parabolica corner. You then got to jump on the anchors and get the thing slowed down to 50 kph by the time your rear wheels cross the entrance line. And Jordan Daly possibly just not managing that one. I can't imagine it's anything to do with the pit exit. It's always on the pit entrance where people overcook it. They get a little bit too kind of, you know, excited coming in, and then maybe forget to put your limiter on. Possibly you're in second gear, you've not downshifted enough. And of course, anybody that plays ECC knows, other than a handful of cars, if you're not in first gear, the pit limiter will not engage itself.
One of the hardest things for me coming to ACC was I was so accustomed to being able to put the pit limiter on in any gear that I was in, and it would just engage. And in ACC, that is not the case. I'm told it's more realistic that it only engages in the first gear. Of course, these cars are modeled after the real cars, right down to the gadgets, the traction control systems. All of that is supposed to be a simulation of the real car, including what you can and can't do with the pit limiter. So that was brand new for me, and it took me a while to remember I can't be in second gear in the majority of these cars and engage the limiter. Unknown if that's what happened there. It's more likely that what Dalton said initially is the case. Just couldn't quite get it wound up coming into the pit lane and sped a little bit. So a second drive through today. Both ACC assigned penalties, I'm afraid, and a big blow for the Just Gamers car as they will try and regroup from that. Certainly had the pace to be inside the top 10 here today. More cars have come into the pit lane to serve their stop. Leader Allen is in. Solensev also in the 161 Honda, and Soldatov in the 991 in as well. Will Louis Alexander come in to complete the cycle of pit stops? I reckon he might.
Yeah, everybody, as we expected, Jesse, pretty much coming in on bang on the half-an-hour mark. Of course, we had an extra 5 minutes tacked on to the start of the race, so by the time we got to the 35-minute mark, it was kind of like the usual half hour where most folk would split the race down. Joshua Allen now on the pit lane in the 223 Porsche, jumps off the jacks, fires the car, away he goes towards the pit exit line. And this man here, Hugo Merles, is who you want to be watching as we jump on board inside the Ferrari Jean Alesi Esports Academy car, number 13. Unlucky for some, Friday the 13th. Look to your right, you're going to see ahead there just Joshua Allen, I believe that is, just a blob slightly ahead of Hugo Merles as he exits the pits, comes down to the pit exit line, and that is indeed a Porsche as we see the shot coming in now. Not too much ground lost, but I would say definitely a loss on pit lane for Hugo Merles there, Jesse.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. The undercut has not worked for a lot of different cars. We saw it didn't work for Tan, and it hasn't worked for Hugo Merles, as now they find themselves in P4, a distant P4. It's been since the start of the race since Hugo was this far behind another car, and now he'll have to regroup. If there's one thing I had confidence in, I think Hugo's going to be able to do it. I don't think that Porsche has the outright pace of the Ferrari in this particular case, so I think that'll be fine. What is interesting to note is that now that Dylan Tan has lost the draft here, that gap is widening. It was 2.1 on pit count. It's 2.4 the time between first and second now, as says 2.5 now, as Savalainen continues to pull on the lead. I think you're going to see the opposite happen for third place, though.
Yeah, I mean, Savalainen's Mercedes, we know, did have the grunt in the straight line on Dylan Tan's McLaren. We saw in the helicam coming down the start-finish straight, Tan pulled out of the slipstream, and the Mercedes still kept gaining on the McLaren. So possibly without that Mercedes punching a giant grey hole in the air for the driver Dylan Tan, it's going to be unfortunately, possibly a lost first place, but never say never in racing, as we do know things can change at the turn of a hat. Joshua Allen finds himself just behind Tan with, 4 seconds roughly to the good. So whether Allen or not can stretch the legs of that Porsche, start closing up on the back of the McLaren, time will be told. We have 27.5 minutes to go as we see Bayern now making a move on an Aston Martin. I believe that's Soldatov in the 991 into the Parabolica. Of course, the NSX on the inside line gets the much favoured line through the corner, out the other side, and maybe we will see if Soldatov can slipstream the NSX down the straight. But I believe the NSX is just that little bit better here, although Bayern now going to the inside. We see a little flash of the headlights possibly there. Not sure if reflections from Soldatov's Aston. Soldatov on the outside, Bayern on the inside. Very clean defensive move, and now hopefully Bayern can get a clean exit out of the first chicane and drive away from Soldatov towards the second chicane. But it looks like the Aston's are slightly better out the corners now as we flick down to the back end of the field. The 999 German car of Aaron Trout on the back of Luis Alexandra in the BMW 311 there. Very kind of virtual drivers by TX3 livery, almost esque. I don't want to say it is because it doesn't look like one, but similar colour scheme on that one as we see Aaron Trout there look to the inside into the second chicane, just not close enough to make a move unfortunately, and tucks back in behind the M4. The M4 is probably quite a good car to be a dance partner with, Jesse. You kind of want to be, you know, having a massive hole punched in the air, and the M4 certainly does that.
Yeah, keep in mind, Aaron Trout had a double stop way early into this race. We're still curious to know if Aaron Trout's going to be able to make it all the way to the end. They double pitted, but they did it so early, it's going to be close on fuel. But the fact that they're in front of Fry and Gohan just tells you what they've been able to accomplish, the not giving up. And keep in mind, there were 24 cars that started the race. Aaron Trout's in P18, so they've gotten a fair few more points than they otherwise would have had. And you never know, you come down to a championship, you're fighting for a top 10 spot, whatever you're fighting for at the end of the season, a couple of points extra that you fought for early in the season, it could be absolutely mega. Aaron Trout, double pit stop, still racing guys, still out in front of some of the field.
Yeah, going back to your point of the double pit lane there, Jesse, I also want to draw your attention to the number 67 down in P14 at the moment, Seidman. This man started from the pit lane, if you remember, Jesse, and by the time he came around turn 2, the field was nearly at turn 3. So that just kind of shows the raw pace of Jeff Seidman as well, in the number 67 Torpedo Attack with 2 C's.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I was just going to say that.
Extra attack.
Yeah, thick with the attack, Jeff Seidman, I'm going to assume. And they certainly have been thick with the attack today. You're absolutely right. Of course, they started this race, like you said, from pit lane. They were, I'd say, what do you reckon, about a 20% of a lap down or something like that?
Easily a couple of corners.
It was incredible stuff, and also 14th place, top 15. It's unfortunate. Now, you don't know if Jeff Seidman did that on purpose to not start in the middle. They qualified P12, of course, and maybe they were a little bit afraid of a melee to start the race, and they did that. Or it's also possible that they just missed the starting procedure because they were away for a second. Either way, it's kept them out of trouble, and they've nearly gotten back to where they would have started anyway.
Yeah, definitely so, Jesse. It's great to see, of course, drivers being a little bit more sensible, maybe, you know, thinking back to it. If Ryan Gill's right in what he said in our ISN, and he started about 5.5 to 6 seconds down. First chicane, you can easily pick up 5.5 to 6 seconds of damage, which, of course, if you repair at your pit stop, like most people do, you know, that could be some crucial time gain there. And of course, finding himself back up into P14, definitely a great drive from Seidman. So keep your eyes on him later on in the championship. Back to our stewards, though, Jesse Lee. Interrupt me if you need to for any exciting things happening on track. But we do have some more reports coming through. We have an incident on lap 6, turn 7, involving the 97 and the 12. A drive-through for the car 12. The 12 broke too late and took out the 97. We have an incident on lap 8, turn 3, involving the 423 and the 16, racing incident, both cars deemed at fault. Lap 8, turn 7, involving the 423 and the 15, again, racing incident, minor contact. We then have an incident on lap 10, turn 12, involving the 183 and the 197, a drive-through for the 197. The 197 takes out the 183, but no position was returned. We then have an incident on lap 11, turn 3, involving the 15 and the 991, racing incident, minor contact. We then have an incident on lap 14, turn 11, involving the 183 and the 161. Both drivers deemed at fault there, so racing incident. And then finally, we are all caught up with an incident on lap 16, turn 6, involving the 699 and the 67. Once again, racing incident, minor contact. And speaking of racing, Joshua Allen, looking in your mirror, you're going to see Hugo Moers.
Certainly is, and just a finishing up clarification on the 197. We suspected they were ever so slightly over the pit limit and got themselves a penalty that way, but it turns out it was coincidental timing. That penalty was for the contact with the 183, so that was not a pit lane infraction for Jordan Daly. That was indeed a steward's drive-through penalty for an accident that they were responsible for. So absolutely hoodwinked us there a little bit with that penalty, and that has forced the 197. They have retired the car based on that, down to 20 cars in the race for round number 1. And very unfortunate, but a couple of cars they have pulled into the garage. And you know, if you are one of the cars that started near the back or has had trouble, you almost sort of relish that a little bit. It's free real estate at that point.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, you know, you've had a rubbish qualifying and you're not where you thought you'd be. You are now where you maybe thought you might be, with a few retirements. Of course, can change the dynamic completely of a race. And looking down the results board on the left, Jesse, I've been saying to keep an eye on him for the race. Samir Foch now finds himself up in P5, starting just outside the top 10, I believe.
To absolutely nobody's surprise, Hugo Merrill's catching Allen as well, and Merrill's will feel the pressure from Foch. I know Foch is 6.9 seconds behind, and that's a nice gap, but it's not enough because Merrill's knows what Foch is capable of. They're in the same equipment. They've raced each other for seasons here on RCI TV. They know they're almost like magnets in a way. They always fighting for podium top 5 spots and stuff like that. Foch obviously trending in the right direction. Merrill's, as I predicted earlier, has caught Allen back up now, and that battle will resume for P3. And if I was Hugo, I would probably try to make the pass as late as possible in hopes to not get repassed, because I'm not sure Allen is going to fall off the back of the number 13 Ferrari if and when the pass were to occur.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it, Jesse? You know, if you make the move stick, is your opponent then going to make the move on you before the clock runs out? And, you know, it's kind of almost famous of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. You know, we see it time and time again down the Dottinger Höhe, where cars have passed each other in laps, then suddenly get this massive tow until the end of the straight where you hit the chicanes before the GP section rejoins. We always see cars switching positions on straights down there. So, you know, if Merles finds a way past Allen, is Allen then going to use the hole that Ferrari is punching in the air to give that Porsche that little bit of extra advantage that it needs to then draft alongside and make another move on him? So you've got to be very careful that you can make the move and make it stick on your opponent.
Certainly do have to, and Dylan Tan not making any headway on Savalainen, and that gap fluctuating between 2.4 to 2.5 seconds. Savalainen, you know, something of a Monza specialist. He's good everywhere as Juna, but he's made it a point of winning here at Monza in recent memory meaning the last calendar year. And he's had some unfortunate races elsewhere, but he always seems to be able to put together good races here, and he's certainly done that today. He's been clinical in his approach and now afforded a nice lead. And doesn't look like he's going to try and surrender that. It's got to keep it on the asphalt, though. Got to keep it on the racetrack. No drive-throughs, no silly mistakes here late in the race. Dylan Tan still very close proximity. But, of course, talk about proximity. Allen and Merles, this is Fight Reignited Part 2.
Yeah, Merle's last time by on the last lap time, just having a look at our broadcasting tool, was 0.3 better than Allen on that last time by. So Merle's is inching in ever so slightly to Allen. It's not very evident on the broadcast at the moment, but he is certainly a lot closer than he was a few laps ago. Just under 18 minutes to go. Can the Jean Alesi Esports Academy car find its way past the car of Joshua Allen in the 223 as they now round through Lesmo 1, Lesmo 2, keeping it very clean, very close towards the exit of the grass AstroTurf, a big section on the exit of Lesmo 2 that you can certainly abuse, and Samir Foch there in the background coming through just before the camera switched as we now head up to the Ascari chicane, looking to keep it very clean on the switchbacks. It's very easy to unsettle the car here. It's, you know, I've done it many a time in the McLaren of all things as well. You kind of flick it a little bit too hard and suddenly the back goes, and that's it. You just can't catch it, and there's not a lot of runoff between the grass and the wall, shall we say, on the inside if you had drivers left in Ascari.
You know, something you mentioned there too, that's also a very big possibility. We don't talk about it much because you can't see it, but it's the air. When you're following another car that closely, by the way, something has just happened to Juna Savalainen. That was 2.6 seconds the gap last interval. It's down under a second now for the lead of this race. Something has happened to your leader, Juna Savalainen, but I will finish my thought. When you're trying to follow somebody through Ascari in particular in dirty air, it's a whole nother ball game. I also found, for whatever reason, even at low speed, Lesmo 1 and 2 to be particularly horrible aero-wise following another car. You got to be aware of that. And it's just really bad in Ascari as well. So you got to take your hat off for Merles, who's following Allen through that particular section of the racetrack, trying to gain as much as possible but not lose anything. And speaking of, we'll try to bring you an update on what just happened to Savalainen. Lost nearly 2 seconds in a single sector there.
Wow, crazy big loss there for Savalainen. Looking at the last time by on the lap times, we had Savalainen on a 1:49.890, and as we see a little coming together here from Marquez and John Aracer in the 699 McLaren through turn 1. Dylan Tan now, as we see towards the front, is way within sight of Savalainen, 0.852 seconds to the good on the last time by of a sector, but Savalainen losing big time in the last lap, 1:49. 1:48.1 was Dylan Tan's lap time, and 1:49.890 was Savolainen's time. That was last time by. As the drivers prepare to head towards the line, we're going to get a timing update. We're going to give you an update on see what happens to Una in that last lap. He does a 1:48.177, matched by Dylan Tan with a 1:48.170. You literally cannot separate these two cars, Jesse. They are near identical in completely different machinery.
Yeah, you love that. You love it when a BOP plan comes together and when it works. And sometimes it doesn't always work, but when it does, it is a beautiful thing. You can have two completely different cars, different displacement, different engine configuration, different amount of cylinders, and all these different things, aero profiles. The list truly does go on. But when they race very well together, they still retain their own characteristics, but over the course of a lap, they even out. And that is the beauty of BOP. Many different cars, vastly different in construction, racing together at the same time. That's why I love GT racing. Tan is within 1.2 seconds of Savolainen now. The gap has went out a little bit. We'll see at the conclusion of the lap if he can keep that above 1 second. This battle continuing here. Allen and Merrill's continuing to pile on the pressure. Allen, the ice water running through their veins, has not made a single mistake. Eagle-eyed viewers in chat have noticed that Sherritt is catching Foch for P5. They were at least 1.6 seconds back. They're 1.8 seconds back now. I suspect Foch made a mistake somewhere, dropped nearly a second to Hugo and Allen, and I wonder if that's what helped Sherritt catch up at the pace that he did. But monitoring all these battles inside the top five, there's a lot going on here late.
Yeah, we've only got 20 cars still circulating around, but there's still plenty of action to be had up and down the field. We've, of course, got the two leaders separated by less than a second. We've then got the bottom step of the podium separated by less than half a second. And then we, of course, have Sherritt on a charge up to the back of Samir Foch. And I'm sure there are plenty more fights up and down the field to be had that we're just not spotting at the moment. A few more stewards reports, 3 to bring you this time. We have an incident on lap 20, turn 3, involving the 97 and the 991 with a racing incident for minor contact. We then have an incident on lap 26, turn 1, involving the 699 and the 423 racing incident, minor contact. And then we have an incident on lap 26, turn 2, involving the 423 and the 699. Once again, a racing incident, minor contact. So a lot of racing incidents tonight, Jesse. Not had the big one typically that we were expecting at the start. So I would say all in all, as Monza races go, Jesse, it's been a pretty clean one, I would say. It's been pretty clean, pretty fair.
Yeah, and I think it shows you what a clean Monza, or cleaner Monza race anyway. We have had a couple of offs, obviously, but I think it goes to show you what is possible here when it does go right. You get these fantastic pockets of racing, and it basically turns into a dogfight, doesn't it, between two competitors who can outfox each other, and it's just brilliant stuff. I mean, you're seeing it up and down the field. You're seeing it right here, Billin and Soldatov, as Soldatov has taken possession of that spot over Billin for P12, and will look to drive away at this particular interval. But it's just great. You don't get particularly hung up, do you really? If there's a big accident, the field gets spread out, but it really is just this line. And obviously there's different groups out there, but they're all still fighting for something here in this race late, and that's all you could ever really ask for from something like this.
Yeah, definitely. Great to see people, of course, not giving up and throwing in the towel when it, luck doesn't always go their way. Seitman started from the pit lane, as we said, Jesse. Proper good drive from that man there. P14 still, and 6 seconds to the good of the next car, so possibly P14 is where we will see him, but avoiding all the chaos that was meant to be turn 1 that never quite happened. So yeah, just crazy to see. We have Jordan Daly in the chat, did retire the Bentley car, unfortunately, due to a drive-through, not for track limits as we thought, for something else, but we will live to fight another day. And it's great to see a variety of machinery being picked, even if you do have the odd car out. such as the Bentley. Who knows, maybe more people will be signing up for next week's race. Of course, you can head over to the website racerci.com, where you can check out all the events that we have on offer for 2023 so far. And any iRacing racers in the chat, there is something on there now for you as well. So if you do want to branch out into the world of RCI, become a part of the community, of course, check out all of our socials down in the description below, including, you know, your typical Facebooks, Instagrams, Discords, etc. But Discord is certainly where it's at for RCI. So jump on in, kind of introduce yourself, pick up a few teams and a few names and faces, and come and join in the fun. But speaking of fun, this battle here, Hugo Morales and Joshua Allen still rages on through the Ascari chicane. Neither driver giving an inch either way, no one giving each other the edge, but the gap is now down to 0.256 as of the last sector board. So Hugo just not finding that kind of, you know, that extra inch or so that he needs to find, Jesse.
Yeah, I wonder too if some of this is just probing for weakness here, coming out of the Parabolica just about side by side with the Porsche. This is a somewhat fair drag race between the two of them, but no, it has to fall back in line, gets a little bit sideways there, thinking about making the move back in the draft, out of the draft now, pulling alongside, has the inside position. This might be what Merrill's has been looking for all day long, trying to reclaim third place. A little bit of contact there from Allen, and it's going to reset them back to the way they were. Now, how the stewards view that, was that contact that led to a position change or a successful defense? I don't know. Glad I'm not a steward, but that's something they certainly will look at. Close racing, though. Allen was not having any of Hugo's advances.
Yeah, Hugo there with a great run down the straight. I think the jink from Allen, where he kind of threw the car to the left to try and break the toe, unsettled the Porsche and definitely gave Hugo the advantage going down into turn one. We saw how easily Hugo pulled alongside that time by, when we've seen previously struggling to get side by side with the Porsche. So definitely some speed lost from Joshua Allen's car. I'm sure he won't be doing that again in a hurry. But like you said, Jesse, I would hate to be a steward looking at that one. That's going to be a very tricky one to deem who was at fault, whether it's racing incident, whether Allen, you know, gained an advantage, whether it was just pure good hard racing, which is like what we like to see here at RCI TV. And of course, Hugo is going to still be on the charge through the Ascari chicane. Wonderful helicam shots between these two. You can see what the gap truly is from the sky looking down at the Monza circuit, and Allen has definitely stretched out a little bit more of a lead on Hugo that last time by.
Yeah, Chats went ahead and farced something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. I don't think a lot of these front runners took tires there. I don't think that they thought 5 extra minutes was too much damage, and I don't think they've risked it. I don't think they've taken the extra 5 seconds in pit lane to do that here in this race. And I think what you're seeing here is a little bit of tire fall off, a little bit of pace drop off, and also grip, and that's leading to a couple of mistakes that we've seen thus far. Savalainen enjoyed over a 2.5 second lead. It's down to a second now. Allen has done an excellent job, in my opinion, of keeping Merrill's behind him for the majority of the race. Foch is falling off a little bit, but because they were embroiled in a battle for P3 there, gained some of that time back. Sherritt, who was, it looked like they were going on a charge to catch Foch for 5th place, has fallen off a little bit. That gap fluctuating, but around 2.5 seconds. Any little mistake here, John, could be absolutely detrimental to your entire day's work here on older tires.
Yeah, I mean, once these Pirellis do go, they do kind of drop off a cliff quite suddenly, especially in these hotter temperatures. Once you overheat the tire, it's very tricky to then bring it back down in temperature. So it's a bit of a trade-off between, do you want to run a kind of colder brake disc that then doesn't radiate as much heat into the rim, into the tire, or do you want to open up those brake ducts in your car setup to, you know, kind of allow more air in to cool the brakes down quicker, but then, of course, you're going to be like opening a parachute coming down the main straight. You're going to have so much drag resistance on the car that you might not even be able to get near your opponent to be able to make a move on those, you know, slightly cooler, slightly grippier tires. So setup is going to be a very big thing that comes into play. Of course, if you've been cooking your brakes, you know, for the last 60 minutes or so, you're going to be screaming out on those Pirellis. They're not going to have a lot of grip, a lot of life left in them, which is probably why we're seeing a lot of drivers now starting to kind of fall off the pace that we're used to seeing. You know, Savalainen's Mercedes typically very heavy on tires over a race once you dump fuel on top of that as well. well, and does drive like a bit of a pig sometimes. Dylan Tan's McLaren, typically in my experience from endurance racing last season with RCI team member Sebastian Brunier, you can really make the tyres last in the McLaren. If you set it up in a particular way, you drive it in a very particular style, you will have slightly more longer tyre life left come the end of your stint. And of course, Joshua Allen's Porsche, we all know, all the way over the rear end of that car is going to be screaming those Pirellis through by now. 5 minutes left to go, and we see side by side now here with Soldatov making a move on Mellors, and this is of course going to tow the NSX by. A little bit of a bump draft maybe there from Bayern, just to say, come on Soldatov, let's go, let's get past this Ferrari. And Soldatov makes the move stick, but Bayern unfortunately misses out on a move. But it's great to see a little bit of NASCAR driving now and again in ACC with the bump drafting.
That was incredible to watch. I knew exactly what Billin wanted. And by the way, whenever Soldatov passed Billin for P12 earlier, I thought Billin was going to be left for dead there, but no, absolutely just followed him around the racetrack. They caught Mellis and now have gained an extra spot, or at least for Konstantin Soldatov, they've gained an extra spot for a car that's had a penalty today. That 991 has a chance maybe of finishing inside the top 10, or at very least at this point, looks like it could be P11. That is an excellent drive from the 991 thus far.
And we have a stewards report now come through on the thing that everybody's been waiting for. This man here, Hugo Merls, when he assaulted a pass on Joshua Allen, tried to make it stick through the first chicane. Unfortunately, could not make it stick. A little bit of elbows out, kind of hard racing. And incident lap 31, turn 2, involving the 223 and the 13, deemed as a racing incident minor contact. So stewards not deeming the contact was place worthy to gain or lose. And of course, Joshua Allen escapes with a racing incident, and Hugo Merlos has just fallen off the back of Allen completely, but then Allen has completely fallen off the back of Tam. Everybody's just gapping themselves now, maybe like we said with tyres, Jesse, just literally falling off that cliff.
I think it is. I think the tires have not been changed on a lot of these front runners, thinking that it would be too hard to make up those 5 seconds in this race. I know a lot of people will argue that ideally you should have changed tires. Just, you know, if you didn't have a penalty anyway, changing tires makes sense. We've seen that in other championships where they've had the 25-second mandatory stop and changing tires was in vogue, but I think a lot of the front runners here have elected to say that it's too hard to pass, it's too hard to make up the time, it's easier to be out in front and defend, is what I think they've said. And by the way, just going back to that penalty assessment on the 223 and the 13, bravo to the race control, the stewards box, and everybody down there, letting the drivers race. If it did not create a big incident, or an incident at all really, it was just a little bit of argy-bargy. They've let that go. They've not ruined a fantastic race in what could be a grandstand finish here for P3. Excellent job, in my opinion.
Yeah, kudos to all the stewards tonight for, of course, giving up their Friday evening and joining us in the booth for some good old-fashioned racing. We, of course, have DB, Glenn, Grim, Oliver, Phil, and Rob tonight's stewards, so shout out to all of them. Big pat on the back for them as well. Making the decisions that we don't want to make, Jesse. We, you know, me and you have said many a time before in both broadcasting and probably racing that I wouldn't want to make that decision. You know, it's too close to call.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, as a steward myself, I often have to make those decisions, but I'm definitely happy to be in this box at times where those decisions have to be made. Though I will say, every decision process is a calm, it's a calculated and methodical approach, and I will say, the approach that we've had for the past year of letting the small things go, it's just been a brilliant revelation to me. I love seeing drivers drive. I don't mind a little bit of body contact. As long as it's fair, nobody leaves the racetrack, nothing's gained or lost, I am all for letting it go. And I think, again, it preserved a fantastic battle for P3. What else would have happened? You'd have gave a car penalty and nothing would have happened. The positions would have been swapped inorganically, and you know, it's just a brilliant job by the entire stewarding team. And again, very few penalties today as well. You got to consider that. There's been so many racing incidents thus far. Very few penalties have had to be handed out. I think that's a credit to the drivers themselves as well, John, because they know what the limit is. They race here in RCI every week pretty much. They know what they can and can't get away with, and they've driven very well to that point.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Jesse, and it does prove why these guys have managed to pre-qualify for Split 1, and of course we do have a Split 2 running alongside this that is unfortunately not broadcast here on RCI TV, although I imagine the same great racing action is going down there as well. And just while the clock runs down to the 30-second mark, we have a final, hopefully, steward's report of an incident on lap 33, turn 2, involving the 991 and this man here, Walter Bayern, in the 183 is deemed a racing incident, minor contact, and that might be for the bump draft. I mean, it says turn 2, but I'm sure that didn't happen in turn 2.
It was. Yeah, I didn't put that together until you said that, but you might be right. Sometimes when you do stuff like that on straights, I can tell you it does create spoofed turns and locations, so it might have just done that by accident. But the time has expired. Joona Savolainen continues to lead that man Dylan Tan by the tune of 2 seconds. The gap. Savolainen has went off the racetrack a few times, but hasn't paid the ultimate price for it. Still enjoys a safe lead as he's going to come around and hopefully win this race from the second place position. What a way to start a championship with a win, John.
Yeah, definitely sets the ground underneath you for a really solid season coming up. You know, you get that massive confidence boost that you wouldn't necessarily get if you've had a pretty stinker of a round 1. You know, you can carry this win through all the way to the end and make yourself feel really good. You know, if you think back to Formula 1 many, many moons ago, the Brawn GP team that sprung out of nowhere from, you know, absolutely nothing, managed to clench a championship title, probably based off the round 1 win, giving them that absolutely massive confidence boost. And this man here takes the cone with him. Joona Savolainen is your round 1 winner for Friday's GT3 Sprint Challenge, followed in not too far down the road by Mr. Tan in the 144 McLaren. Joshua Allen is somewhere there flashing the lights as he crosses the line to take the checker. Hugo not all too far behind him. Jesse Lee did manage to find something in the end, but not enough, unfortunately. Samir Foch comes through and takes P5 in the red Ferrari Enjoyers car, the 888, and these guys here side by side for a little victory parade as we head through. Probably thumbs up out the window at each other, you know, congratulating each other. Great battle, very hard fought, and I think these two are going to be locked kind of bumper to bumper for the whole season, Jesse. I really can't wait to see what these guys bring.
Yeah, that's a lot of sportsmanship there. You can see Tan pulled up right to the driver's window. Savolainen sat there for a second and then sped off. A little bit of mutual congratulations, some light flashing there. It was very close, folks. At times it was millimeters between the two top running cars, but just a brilliant job, all things considered, to get those cars home. And it might have not been the result Tan wanted, but they've got to know there's tracks coming up that suit their car. And with a second place finish here, they're strongly in the running. Allen in third place. Talked about Porsche all day, about that one of them might surprise you, and it was Allen's Porsche that it did exactly that, holding off Merrill's. But in my opinion, all these drivers in the top 6 or 7, they all have a legitimate shot at this championship based on their pace today, and they take good points into the next round.
Yeah, looking at all the names up and down, like you say, from the top 5, even top 6, Chirat there, if it wasn't for the 5-second penalty, certainly might have found himself ahead of Samir Foch, but at least certainly battling with the Ferrari with his McLaren. The NSXs with a fairly strong finish as well. 2 of them managed to get into the top 10. And of course, this is your final results on the screen as of post-race penalties, etc. We have Savolainen taking the win from Tan in second. Joshua Allen rounds out the third step of your podium. Hugo Morales not quite enough to make the move stick on Allen, although a very close fought fight indeed. Samir Foch P11 to P5, great improvement from his qualifying position. Sherat comes in 6th, Ratiani in P7, Solnstev in P8, Seville P9. Jesse, good drive from them. O'Brien in 10, Soldatov in 11, Bayern in 12th, Mellis in 13th. Seitman started from the pit lane, managed to get his way up into P14. John Aracer, regular RCI driver, P15. Luis Alexandra from Virtual Drives by TX3, by the way. It was the car I thought it was. Very distinct color scheme on those as always. Marquez, P17. Earntrout, P18. Fry in 19th. Gohan in 20th. And Jordan Daly, unfortunately, retired, along with Seminara and Kubaki to round out your top 23.
Well, folks, we would, of course, like to thank all of you for being with us, all your chat messages, and just watching the racing here on RCI TV. As always, we invite you to like and subscribe on your way out tonight. We'll be back with you on Monday for the continuation of the Super Trofeo Cup, Lamborghini Trofeo Cup cars. Brilliant racing machinery. They straddle the line between GT3 and GT2, and they raced very well in round number 1. Round number 2 coming at you this coming Monday. And of course, we'll be back with you next Friday for the continuation of the Friday GT Sprint Challenge. We will be at Brands Hatch in 1 week. And we hope to see you there. Completely different racing circuit to this track, of course. In addition to that, we also talk about the other series. The Rookie Championship Season 3 is open as well. All of the iRacing stuff, the 3 hours of Okayama, and the Mazda Cup GT4 Multi-Class Championship Series from RCI on iRacing is open and available. For more information on how you can get a 3-month code for iRacing, join the Discord in the description and go to racerci.com for more information. Of course, the big series we're all talking about, the RCI 6-hour endurance esports event, an €8,000 minimum prize pool for that. And of course, if that's too rich for you, then of course we still have our community driven series that runs alongside that as always. Plenty of stuff. And no matter what your skill level is, we have a split for you here at RCI. John, take it away.
Yeah, great racing today here at Monza, and we are back here for the Lamborghini Cup on Monday, myself included. So a nice weekend in Italy, paid for by RCI. Thank you very much indeed. But a quick message from our partners, AK Informatica, of course, for providing our high-end server solutions here at RCI. However, they also do provide high-end hardware, peripherals, and accessories, including sim gear, and of course, driver61.com, where via RCI, you can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code with a link in the description below and heading on over to driver61.com. And finally, Fanatec, your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment on the market. You can, of course, use our affiliate link in the description below if you're looking to pick up some new hardware in 2023. And it won't cost you a penny, but it does help us here with the running costs at RCI and long weekends in Monza. So we're here again on Monday for the Lamborghini One Make race. Of course, you can head on over to all of our socials, as Jesse Lee said. We have Discord, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, remember to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel because it does help us, and we have gained some massive subscribers in the past year or so, so it's great to have every single one of you with us. But I'm sure from myself and from Jesse Lee, we wish you all the best of the weekend, and we hope to see you again on RCI TV for Monday, where we head, of course, back to Monza for our Super Trofeo Cup. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful time.